All right. All right. Hey there. So today I'm going to be implementing tabs. So we can open multiple tabs, and each tab is going to have a set of these purchase, sell, and summary components. No changes since last episode. Let's see. One thing I did want to change is where we defined root state. First of all, I figured out how to use maps correctly. So let's go to that reducer file, and then where do we define store state? Here it is. So this is a map with a string pointing to a component, and then when we create the store is where we initialize the components to be a new map. And that's it. Now we have successfully typed the components interface of the store state as a map from a string to a component. Refresh the page, nothing happens, that's good. Now we just have better typing. So, there are some complaints about semicolons, but they're all warnings, nothing to worry about. In order to make these components in order to create tabs, we're going to have to create them dynamically. Let's create a button such that when we click on it, like add new component, add new tab, it'll create a new tab. We'll do that in the summary calculator? No. Where's is it just the app? Is that where we're doing anything? You're right. Okay, so here we are. Right now we've hard-coded two add components at the very top. So if we're going to make the app be the tab container, so if we have app, suppose we've got app is tab manager, and then if we have a tab component has its own properties plus a child component, which is currently a purchase, a sell, and a summary. Let's comment this out so it makes a little more sense. Right, so right now we don't really have tabs. What we have is we're just rendering these three components. So the app is acting as a tab, but what we want to do is we want to wrap these three components inside of a tab. So I guess we should first create a tab component. New file, nope. Let's call it a new folder. And is it a tab? Technically it's just a container that contains these three things. Am I going to be reusing this container? If my container is going to be generic and in the future, I think a component container is fine. I guess a tab is fine as well. Let's go with it. Index. Let's grab everything in the summary calculator, throw it in here. But now it's a tab, and it's being exported. Map state to props doesn't have anything. The render shouldn't really have anything either. Difference doesn't exist. Get summary shouldn't exist. Okay, we don't really take there. Store state. Okay, there is a tab component. So you should definitely be passing along children. Follow the props. Const children. This dot props. Whoops, just props, not this. Tab spacing is. Why is the default tab spacing 4? Oh well. Children. So complaining that props doesn't have children. Should. I believe it's a JSX element type. But it should be kind of obvious. Children is a reserved word in React. So I'll just keep it as any for now. And then when we render, we should render const children, read the children from the props, and then just render them. Whoops, typo. Yeah. And technically children, yeah, let's just wrap it in a div. Technically children should be already a valid JSX element, in which case we don't actually need the wrapper. We can just do children like this. So then if we go back to app, for now, let's just make sure the tab works in general by using it for what we currently have here. So the same way we have div class name app intro, here we should do tab /tab. So these three are now being passed in as children. Cannot find name tab, right? We have to import it. Can I just right click? Nope. Okay. Yeah. Let's import this component from not in source. No extension. And we're gonna also have to restart the server since we created a new file. Objects are not valid as React child. Object with keys. Whoa. Okay. Objects are not valid as a React child. Found object with keys children. If you want to render a collection of children, use an array instead. Actually, these are not valid. These need to be wrapped inside a div. So maybe that's what it's referring to. So tab really should then render what it's returning in a div. Boom. The app still working. But now we have a tab. So that means we can create multiple of these tabs. Right, let's remove these comments. So we should really start off with 0 tabs, or maybe 1 tab, doesn't matter, but we should have a button that creates the tab. So create tab, which can be a function up here. And inside the app, maybe let's for now put it underneath this financial calculator title, the button. We bind it to this .create tab. And let's just confirm it being clicked. Create tab. Now when I click on it, you can see down here, create tab is being triggered. Okay. Maybe we shouldn't use an input, but for now, let's say placeholder, create tab. Great. So how do we create this tab? If we want multiple tabs, we're going to first of all want multiple IDs for each tab. And the parent container, the app, should be the one deciding what these IDs are called. And so the very first thing we probably want to do is generate an ID. Then what we want to do is, let's say step 1. Step 2, we'll want to save ID in the store state. And then once the store state updates, the selector, this component, the containing component, selects new store state with the new list of components, and renders the new set of tabs. That is what we need to do. How do I generate an ID? JavaScript generate UUID. Okay, this might work. Console.log UUID. Is this really how you generate them? What's the complaint? Cannot find, yeah. Oh, good. Okay. Also doesn't exist. How do I import this thing? All right, I'll just use this function to generate random IDs for the components. This is technically our first helper, right? Components, reducers, types. So let's say new folder, helper. Our folder names are all plural, so let's stick to that. Helpers, new file. For now, let's just do an index. Export function generate UID. Yeah, public domain, that's great. Okay. And just in case I need it for later, I'll copy the Stack Overflow page from where I got it. And do I want to import? I guess generate UUID is okay. I want to rename it to GUID though. GUID. Just easier to type out for me. Copy that. Import that from the helpers folder. There we go. And then let's log the output. Refresh the app. And so when we click on create tab, we should see what ID we will generate. It's at the bottom here. And yeah, these look sufficiently random. For our purposes, let's go with it. So step 1 is complete. Next, we need to have a mechanism of saving in the store state. Actually, you know what? On second thought, this doesn't need to be the store state because this is, for the time being, I think we should just use local state. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Interface state, and then I guess tabs should be a list because it's first in. Yeah, we'll keep the order. A list of strings. And the string, actually, what is a tab? Like, it's a list of tabs is a list of singular tabs, and each tab should have at least an ID, which is the GUID that we're just generating, but it should also probably have a name. So for the time being, I guess interface tab is an object with an ID, which is a string, and name, which is a string. And a list of tabs, an array actually, that's what they're called. And state can go down here. And there we go. We've got the interface for a tab. We have the interface for the state with the tab's property. And now it's just a matter of initializing all of this. Constructor props. Super props. And then we initialize the state as having just an empty list of tabs. And then when the component mounts, we could say create the first tab. We're gonna have to create the relationship between each tab and also each of these child components, but for the time being, I guess I should erase what we're currently rendering and do that first. Yeah. Okay, so we initialize tabs, and then on click of create tab, we const GUID should equal to, we generate an ID, and then we do this. We want to set the state to a new version of tabs. So let's say, I wonder, does the destructuring work on lists? What happens if I do console.log the destructuring of tabs? This.state.tabs. What will that give me? Is declared but never used. That's fine. Is that what's blocking me? Still declared but never used. Generate GUID. Don't tell me that that's not logging this. Log me. Okay, let's fully comment out. Generate GUID. Now let's go. Still nothing. Oh well, let's say, so we create the GUID. All right, we have to re-import it. There we go. And then we want to create a new list of tabs. How do we do a deep copy of a list? JavaScript copy list. Okay, seems that slice is the agreed upon way. const new tabs, more like updated tabs, shape the tabs dot slice, this dot state. So this creates a copy, and then we do updated tabs dot push good. Although technically updated tabs isn't just a string, it's an object with an ID and a name. So we should push an object with the ID being the GUID and the name let's say the name for now relates to, by default, new tab. That seems reasonable. And finally, we need to render this. Oh, well, this dot set state. Tabs as new tabs, or updated tabs. So we have the equivalent of step 1 and 2 done. This component selects new store state with the new list. We don't need to do that because it's actually local. And then we should render for each tab a bunch of components. Great. Render tabs. Let's make that a function. And this function should get tabs from this dot state, and it should return tabs dot map for each tab something. And what it should return is a component called a tab. And realistically, it should be doing all of this down here. So we put all that here, and now the tab ID should equal to tab.id, and name should equal to tab.name. Pretty simple. There are going to be a few underlines because in tab we haven't specified props. So ID being a string, name being a string. These are technically irrelevant here because we don't do anything with them just yet. Back here, the underline's gone. So there we go. We're returning, and so down here now we can just do this dot render tabs. Okay, so now there's nothing that appears when the page just loads, and when I click on create tab, it looks like a bunch of stuff appears. If I click on create tab again, we actually have two sets of details now, two sets of components. Great. Now we are getting a complaint that each child in the array iterator should have a unique key prop. That sounds like it might be kind of where we have multiple of something, and the tab component, I believe we never set up a key. So it takes an ID and a name, and this I guess may be where it's relevant, where we should really wrap it. Oh, that's not okay. Whoops. This is where it's relevant, where we want to set the key because we have a lot of conflicting divs inside the same parent equal to the ID, because that is unique. So now that should get rid of that warning. When I click once, twice, nope, that is incorrect. Maybe I'm missing something else. Each child in the array iterator should have a unique key prop. Is this not the problem? Is the problem up here, and the key should equal to the ID? Tab.id. 1, 2. Oh, fascinating. So it does apply to the parent and not the child for this key thing. Okay, let's remove this since we don't need it. Let's remove this ID. Clicking multiple times, we have multiple ones up here now. I want to really be able to differentiate between them. So let's actually throw in the name at the top. Each tab, when rendering, render its children, but also let's do an input where the value is equal to the name. There. So now when we render this again, create a new tab. The first new tab is called new tab. The second new tab is called new tab. And style obviously isn't great, but it's there. We could also do, let's say we want to rename the tabs. Do rename tab, which is a function that should take an event and it should do stuff. What should it do? So first we get the name and the value from e.target, and then we want to change the name of the tab that you're editing. So I guess first of all, how do you know which tab you're editing? Well, the name will probably be the ID of the tab. So in order to find out which tab it is, we'll just loop through the tabs and find the one with the appropriate ID that matches name. Let's grab tabs from this.state and then tabs.find based on the tab, tab.name, tab.id rather, is equal to name. There we go. And then tab we want to rename it. So tab.name should equal to value. Object is possibly undefined. If it exists, which it really does have to exist, it shouldn't be undefined. This is just kind of a logical thing. Because like find might not return it, but we know that you can only rename a tab the way we're coding it, so it does exist. I mean, if not tab, throw tab should exist. Is that how I throw errors? I'm not really sure. But yeah, tab should exist. And then we set this tab equal to, I'm worried that this part right here is a mutation. So I believe that if I did if I just push the object, we're not really going to be setting the new state properly. Not certain though, so let's just go with it. This.setState tabs as new tabs. But we haven't defined the new tabs yet, so const new tabs should equal to tabs.slice. And then if we find this here, technically now setting this name property inside the tab field, given a copied over new tabs, now it's a new object, I think. Now it's a mutation, but along a new object, so this could actually work. And we want to handle rename. Pass that in. Rename tab. So that the tab component will, whenever we change that input that we just created, will actually change the name of the tab. Okay. handle rename function. We could be more specific, but for now I think that's plenty. It's kind of obvious. This is small app. Handle rename, then on change, we have handle rename. Okay, we've got a problem. Is that a sign with the detail file? Oh, maybe it's because this is a function. Yeah, okay. I guess it might be a different function than the one I'm thinking of. Let's move along. Don't want to get stuck up on those types again. So we create a tab. New. Well, typing doesn't work. Tab should exist. Throwing the error. Great. If not tab, throw error. What is the issue? Let's add a debugger. I think there's actually an earlier debugger from somewhere in the app. Nope, that's the one I just made. Summary calculator, yeah. This debugger does not need to be here. Okay, refresh, create tab, change what's going on. So we have tab doesn't exist. What about new tabs? It's a list with an object. However, I'm suspecting that when we iterate over a list, we might be iterating over the keys and not the objects, the values themselves. So what if you did console.log tab here? Oh, it is the value. So we do get to the ID. Oh, but the name is undefined. Right, so let's confirm that name is an empty string. It shouldn't be. We go back to the tab. The value is the name, but the name should be the ID. There we go. Now, create the tab, scroll down, click to play my newest tab. Boom. And then if I click create tab again, we have a second tab down here, my oldest tab. And there's no conflicts, no warnings, no errors. Click it again, go down here, my middle tab, great. Everything is working. Let's actually clean this up so we only have one tab visible at a time. How should we do that? Let's see, the container component has a list of tabs, and then you should probably know also selected tab. We can go by ID or by index. Since it's an array, I mean either one works really. Selected tab index. Let's go with that for now. Should be null by default. And then selected tab index. When we create a tab, that's automatically selected. So updated selected tab index should be updated tabs.length -1 because it's a list starting from 0. So whenever you create a new tab, it'll automatically be selected, and then once rendering, selected should equal to, we should probably read this. It should be true only if the selected tab index is equal to I'm guessing the second input should be the index, should equal to the index. But this is overdoing it. Why not just do ID? Selected tab ID is equal to this tab.id. Selected tab ID over here, and then somewhere up here, And up here, and now it's a string. ID. Now we need to get, oh, so we have the GUID. So technically we should do, oh no, there, yeah, just assign it the GUID. And complaining that selected doesn't exist on tab. It's fine, we go here. Selected is Boolean. Whoa. And when we render, we check if selected exists. Style should equal to const. Well, actually, if not selected, return null. Pretty simple. Don't even need to customize the style. Just actually unrender it and render it when it displays. Tabs never selected. Never. It's not assignable to read only. Selected tab ID. Selected tab ID incompatible. Type null is not assignable to type string. Right. When we initialize it as null, but actually it should be a string over here. Okay, refreshing, creating a tab, it exists. Creating a new tab, you can't really tell any difference, but it feels like there's two tabs. So I guess next issue is how do I select different tabs? There's no mechanism that I can select them with. That's the next thing we need to do. And in the app, we probably want the render tab navigation to be a function. It does stuff very similar to render tabs. So we need to grab all the tabs and we want to loop through them and return something. Tabs.map. For each tab, we do something. We return, for now, let's do inputs again, since they're the flavor of the month. The name should be tab.id, value, tab.name, and on change, or on click technically, whenever you click it, we want to do something. Whenever you click on this input, we want to not create a tab, we want to focus on the tab. And we don't have a mechanism to set focus. So select tab should be a function. Select tab that takes an ID of a tab. Hopefully that's obvious. It's explicitly a string type. Or we could even do a key of tab. No. Nope. There we go. ID is a key of tab. And this dot set state what are we setting the state to? Selected tab ID should equal to ID with a lowercase I. This just selects this ID. Great. And now on click, we want to execute this dot select tab. Whoops. We want to execute a function that this dot select tab of tab.id, the ID we're currently on. Oh, it's just it's like mentioning how here it's a string. Oh, but okay, it's not a key of. When I wrote key of, it meant either explicitly the string ID or name. That's not at all what we're referring to. It is just a string. Where's that key of? Yeah. You are just a string. I guess, yeah, we don't need to do that in the render. Although we could give it a special background, but okay, let's remove that for now. So we have a list of inputs, and then the navigation should probably be rendered above the tabs. This dot render navigation. Create a tab. Create, there we go. We have multiple tabs. Here is each tab. First tab, select the second tab. Nice, second tab. Notice as I rename it, the tab auto renames up here. Third tab, and we clearly, based on this changing, are selecting different tabs. Yeah, there's a few warnings and errors right now, but that's because I'm using inputs in a very strange way, definitely not in its final form. There's no scroll, so only one of these is visible at a time. Great. The tab name, don't really need this anymore since we can technically, in addition to clicking this and selecting it, we could also make this rename. So this component becomes a little obsolete. This, remove this, don't need the handle rename anymore. Go back to the app, don't need the handle rename. And then on this input, we have on click, we select it, but also on change, handle, this not handle rename. Is that not what I called it? Oh, just rename tab. Okay. Name is declared but never used. Where do I declare it? Probably in the tab folder. Yeah. Okay. Create a tab. My new tab. Create a second tab. My other new tab. Third tab. Blah, 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 blah. Select different tabs. Now these are not attached to anything yet, these components. So even though I'm selecting different tabs, each tab is rendering the same different components, but that are connected at the same part of the store. So what we're going to want to do is create different purchase sell components in the store for each tab. Where do we do all that? We do that somewhere up here on will mount. There, this add component. So component names are no longer constants, they're going to be dynamic because we're also going to need to append tab ID to them or something like tab name. And they should no longer be made when this component mounts. Technically, these could be made when the actual components themselves mount. Why not do that? Why should the parent attach these to the store? The child should know by itself that when it's getting removed, it should collect its own garbage from the store. Fascinating. Yeah, I don't think this component needs an add component. If we go here to the purchase calculator, and let's say we do add component, and we want to import it, component will mount, add component, this.props, and what are we adding exactly? Your ID, based on the ID. And we haven't defined that component, that's fine. Cannot find ID. Okay, let's actually read this from props then. But add component as well as the ID. Cool. And then component will unmount should do something very similar with remove component based on our ID. And voila, this will create the instance of this component in the store and remove the instance of this component in the store. Great. In that case, we can now remove this, which doesn't do anything when it mounts. I mean, technically, we could initialize one tab by doing this.create tab. Boom. And now here, we add the component based on the ID. We need to make sure that each purchase calculator has a unique ID. And right now, they don't. They all share the same ID. So what if we just, I guess, combine them with I don't want to do the tab.id because that's just going to be too difficult to go through. So I guess tab.name. The problem there being that the tab names can conflict, but technically these component names cannot. Whoa. Okay. Cannot read property share quantity of undefined, something. Right. So previously we were assuming that component existed in the render function of let's say the purchase calculator, but now it doesn't have to. And if not this.props.component, then we should really return null until it exists. And we will initialize it when it will mount. And I do believe sometimes there's a render before it mounts, or there's going to be a render in between the time this gets executed to this. So maybe it mounts, it renders, and then it executes add component. I'm not sure. Still cannot read that of undefined. Why? Debugger, please. Since that should not happen. We very explicitly say to not do anything. So this.props, what does it have? Component is undefined. What if we do not this.props the component? True. If true, return null. Maybe it's just complaining about a different component, the cell calculator. Okay. Gotta do the same thing for the cell. Or do I? Can the tab know not to render these things? No, they need to be rendered in order for the component will mount to be executed. So then they also need to decide when not to render. So this for now makes sense. Cell calculator, similar line, and then we also we save summary calculator, same line. Does it not even, okay. If either this doesn't exist or the cell component doesn't exist, then return null. Great. And only the purchase calculator is showing right now because we haven't actually done the component will mount initialization of the other two. So when the cell calculator gets mounted, it should add component. There we go. And then that's it. The summary doesn't need it because that's a typo. The summary component doesn't need it because the summary component is only listening for the sell and the purchase calculators. Add component is not a function. That's surprising. Oh, that's probably because I didn't attach it at the bottom to the props. Dispatch. Import it as well. Save again. Rerun. We have everything. Tab 1. Whoa. Aha. So every time I rename the tab, my components get messed up right now because the component is attached by ID to a name. So name in the app, this doesn't work. We also have some repetition here, so we should definitely simplify this a bit, but I mean, the ID doesn't change, only the name changes. First tab, second tab, oops. And now if I did, let's say I purchased 100 shares at $10 each, then I sold 150, sold 100 shares at 11 each, we made $100. We go back to the first tab, all zero, go back to the second tab, all zero again. That's a bug. Was hoping the values would reappear. What are we missing? What are we missing? The name. Tab, that's correct. On click, on change. Rename tab takes an event. These guys have a unique ID. The tab IDs don't change. Purchase calculator. Whoops. Since this doesn't have a, oh, is it because I unmount it? That shouldn't matter. I don't think we need a key up here, but we never remove it, which is fine. Sometimes we don't show it, but when we do show it, we're gonna show it with the value. I don't know. Let's throw in a debugger down here. Refresh the page. 15. Create a new tab. 1, 2, 15. Okay. I'm gonna click on here. What do we have for, first of all, data. We have purchase shares, the ID of the component makes sense. We have 2 purchase shares components, all zeros. Oh, the name of these inputs is different. I just changed the IDs to be something very different. Uh-oh. So now, this is the ID. Do we really want purchase shares to be at the beginning? Because what's happening is name, or handle and change rather. Is it the handle and change? Is expecting No, that's fine. How does it know which component to update? Based on the ID. Oh. But the ID isn't just the ID. The ID is actually ID plus component name plus like the tab ID, I guess, is what this ID is. Okay. For now, let's just do this. That's what this should be. We're not changing the right thing. This should be generalized later into a helper maybe. Plus, definitely into a helper. Underscore plus ID. Technically, it's a const component key now. Should be these three things. And we need to import component names. We can't. Component names. Let's copy this line up here. Why? Why is this an issue? We're probably further out. Yeah, cool. Okay, so now we're correctly going to be updating the right part of the store state, theoretically. So cell 15, let's look at the store state. 15. Now, this is tab 1. We create a new tab. I'm going to call it tab 2. And at the end of all of these updates, let's see if we've persisted with the original. Ooh. Well, we do have the original cell shares, but something's still off. Firstly, this needs to happen in both cell shares. Cell calculator. Component key was here, and we import component names up here. Technically, component constants. Cell shares. Okay, let's try this again. 1, create a tab. 2, 15, not even changing. We have 3 cell shares components. This is definitely wrong. Why does this happen twice? ID. What? Purchase calculator. Let's put this back to being an ID for now. Yeah, what was I doing? Yeah, the ID should be a component. Component.cellShares plus ID. Component name is defined but never used. That's fine. We can remove that. 1, 2, 2. At this point, we have 4 components, but this didn't update. The cell share quantity did not update. what will this return? We updated the cell. It will return share price, share quantity, subtotal. That sounds great. I click create new tab. What's the new one going to return? What's data.id? Purchase shares. What's this do? Okay, what's data.fields? Undefined. What's data.id? Why do we set the ID being equal to data.id? Oh, that's the component state. What state? There's currently only one. It has the value 2. What are we passing it? We're just creating a new component. Great, new component's created. And then when we look at the state now, we only have 1 cell shares with the original value. The new one did not get made. Why? Component will mount as component. We have 2 cell shares, but yet when I toggle, it's not showing the values, even though it knows there's only 2. Oh, it clears them. Why does it do that? I think it's something to do with the reducer. Although all we're doing oh, it keeps remounting it, which resets the state to 0, 0, 0, the default state. And it keeps remounting it because it doesn't have a key, because it keeps thinking it's changing. So the key being equal to the ID does sound relevant. Although I believe we were doing this in the parent previously. But yeah, what happens if we do it in the parent? We've set the okay. Const, we should definitely also What does this do? Purchase ID. There we go. Purchase ID, sell ID, and the key should also be unique. Okay. So if the components don't get unmounted, then they shouldn't reinitialize their state. So they should carry over whatever state they have from before. So currently, 15 and 1. If we go back here, it executed that component again. Seems like maybe the parents here need to be set to the ID. Const ID. Oops. Same thing with the cell calculator. Don't make me do this with the summary calculator, but whatever, I'll do it. Just no property ID. ID is a string. I'm guessing, oh, key. You should take a key, which is a string. And then cell should take a key, which is a string. I think. No property ID. No property ID and no string index signature. Summary calculator. Oh. Okay. PID key string is not assignable to something that is either a purchase component. ID is missing in type. Summary. It's right there. Do I make it optional? Oh, okay. 15, no, tab 1, the value 15, create new tab, tab 2, the value is 10. So just to confirm, we come down here, you can see 15 and 1. That's the state before, which makes sense, before we changed it to 10. Click on 1 again, and it's adding 2 more components for some reason. The share quantity is still there. ID share quantity, but it does erase it after a while. Why does it keep adding? Is it considered unmounting if when we return null? That shouldn't be it. Add component when the component will mount. Like, yeah, I could change this, but it should not even be calling new component to begin with. And I only call, well, okay, we have a lot of add components apparently. The functions. Does component. Oh, if it's not selected, the tab returns null, and this amounts to children. The tab should really, no, but, yeah, we don't want to return null. We don't want to keep mounting and unmounting these components. So instead, let's do const hide. Const custom styles, an object where display, if it's selected, block, otherwise hidden, I think is the value. And then style should equal to boom. And now instead of there, the children will always render, making them not mount and remount. 2, 1, 3. So we click on different things, and everyone is showing display none. I think it's display none, not display hidden. So cell 5, 1, 2. There we go. 10, 20, 5, 15. And then come back here. We have a different set of numbers. Come back to tab 1. We have original tab 1 numbers. Go to tab 2 numbers. And we can rename the tabs. Boom. Create a third tab. Great. Tabs are now working. That's it for now.